So good evening and welcome. This is the meeting of the Special Education Advisory Committee of the Halton District School Board for Tuesday, June the 1st, 2021. Given the need to practice social distancing due to the COVID pandemic, we are holding this meeting remotely through a video conference. This meeting is being recorded. In accordance with Ontario Regulation 463/97 and the new guidelines effective February the 1st, 2021, any meeting of the Board of Trustees and/or committee meetings which are open to the public must be live streamed to be able to take questions from the public. The purpose is to foster two-way participation during these meetings. To comply with this, SEAC will be using a Google form, which is attached to each agenda, distributed in advance of the meetings, and posted on the HDSB SEAC website page. Questions posed during the live stream meetings of SEAC may be answered during that meeting, particularly those related to agenda items, or at the following meeting at the discretion of the chair. For efficiency, multiple questions received that are similar in nature may be grouped together at the discretion of the chair and/or vice chair. Questions will not be attributed. Notation will be made that multiple people ask the same question. Any questions that contain language that is hateful or discriminatory will not be considered. So first of all, we're going to start with a roll call to record who's in attendance. Could you please answer yes or present? So Lou, are you ready?
I am not ready, so
okay.
We'll have to do something a little bit different because I can't find my printed sheet with everybody's name on. So I would just ask that people tell us that they're here because I don't have my list and I can't find
That's okay, Lou. Don't worry about it. Okay.
And I can record everyone as well.
Yeah. Okay.
I can just let everybody know that Heather Garrett is unable to attend this morning, so I am here in her place. Even though I'm usually here, but I'm here tonight.
Okay. All right. So let's start with for ABC, Yarlene.
Yes, I'm here.
Okay. And do you have an alternate?
It's Jen. Yes, I'm
Jen.
here.
Okay. Hi, Jen. Okay.
Hello.
We've got two ABC. Okay. Great. So we've got LDAHH, Diane van der Bosch.
Oops, I just turned myself off. I'm here.
Okay, and I am here. Okay. That's Alison Brindle. We have Diane Miller. Yes?
Present. Thank you.
Okay, and we have Lucille Morris.
I'm here.
Yeah. So from Easter Seals, we have Melissa.
I'm here.
Okay, and do you have a second?
Yes, Sarah.
Yeah, I'm
Sarah.
here.
Okay, Sarah's Lansley. Great. Thank you. And we have Sophia.
Hi, I'm here.
Great. And again, your second is?
Heather Duran, and it looks like she's not here yet.
Okay, all right. So we'll keep an eye out for Heather. And okay, is it James?
Yeah, here.
Okay, great. And so in terms of the trustees, we have Margot, who is here as the rep. Joanna.
Good evening.
Olivia, yeah. And we have Tracy.
Hello, one and all.
Okay, great. And obviously we have some staff members here tonight. Are there any other members of associations or trustees who are present here tonight that need to be recorded?
Candace Keem is here from Community Living Burlington.
Great, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Okay, so we have a record of the attendees. Okay, at this stage, we're going to begin by honouring the land. And obviously, this week has been, or the end of last week has been a difficult time for members of our Indigenous community. And so it is with deep respect and sympathy that we acknowledge the contribution of the Indigenous community to our history and our lands. And recognise the lives of the 215 children that were found in Kamloops. Halton, as we know it today, is rich in history and the modern traditions of many First Nations and the Métis. From the Anishinaabe to the Attawandaran, the Haudenosaunee and the Métis, These lands surrounding the Great Lakes are steeped in Indigenous history. As we gather today on these treaty lands, we have the responsibility to honour and respect the 4 directions: land, water, plants, animals, ancestors that walked before us, and all the wonderful elements of creation that exist. We would like to acknowledge and thank the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation for sharing their traditional territory with us. Thank you. So first of all, we need to approve the agenda for tonight's meeting. Are there any modifications or amendments that need to be made for the agenda? If so, could you indicate your wish to speak or put a comment in the chat box? I'm not seeing any. So, Lou,
I'd
if
like
you'd
to
like
move, it's James Baldwin. I'd like to move that we adopt the agenda.
Okay, great. Thank you, James. Anybody like to second?
I'll second.
Okay, thank you, Lucille. Is there any opposition to the agenda as it stands? Or anybody who wants to abstain? None being noted, the agenda is approved unanimously. Next, we have the approval of our May the 4th minutes. Are there any errors or omissions? And if you wish to speak, please indicate so in the chat box or raise your hand. Yarlene.
I found the draft minutes that Norna sent a couple of days ago, and there was a typo. And on the item, I believe, was on my last name. That when I second April's minutes, and so there was a typo of my last name. So I think Norna already made the correction to that, but I don't know if everybody received the corrected version of it.
Okay, great, thank you. So Lorna, if we could make sure that that error is corrected. With that error corrected, are there any other issues or any other amendments need to be made to the minutes?
Yes, I like to speak to the May 4th minutes, and I like to make an amendment regarding the vote from ABC on the special education plan.
Okay, and what amendment would you like to make, Yarlene?
I would like to amend that ABC will withdraw our support and for the special education plan, and instead we will file a minority report.
Okay, so I believe that as it stands, the minutes for May stand as they were set, because that didn't take place in this meeting. So we'll approve the minutes as they are, but that we will make an amendment or make a note in the June minutes that ABC is withdrawing their support for the special education plan. Perhaps we'll come back to that after the vote on the minutes, and then we can, perhaps you can indicate the reason for your change of opinion for SEAC. Okay, thank you. So would anybody like to approve the minutes with the amendment that Yarlene made on her name?
I'll approve.
Okay, Diane, thank you. And anybody like to second?
I will second.
Okay, thank you, Tracy. Does anybody have any, does anybody not approve the minutes as they are stated? Or have an abstain from that vote? Okay, not seeing any. The minutes as recorded for May are approved. However, we will note in the June minutes that the Association for Bright Children has revoked their support for the special education plan and intends to file a minority report for submission to the Ministry of Education. before we move on to the action items, Yarlene, would you like to perhaps provide some information to SEAC as to the reason for your change? You're on mute, Yarlene.
Okay, sorry. And so I will be presenting to SEAC and regarding the ABC Halton's vote last month and the reason for withdrawing our support for the education plan this year. So ABC Halton voted last month to support the special education plan. We were a bit confused by the process because the vote happened before the SEAC discussion. It was our mistake, and we would like to withdraw our support and file a minority report to the board because ABC Halton believes that the current special education plan does not support all children in Halton with special needs, identified gifted. Primarily, there are two issues which have affected the gifted children and family with the board. The issue number one is the declining early identification and placement of primary gifted children in self-contained classrooms. So it's noted in the education plan standard number 6, educational and other assessment. The only assessment for giftedness is a grade 4 screening process each year using the CAT-7. The board has heard the report from ABC and received numerous emails from ABC Halton and its representative on SEAC in the past couple of years that changing or eliminating the early identification process for children who are gifted may have negative consequences during those formative years. As a result, we saw a significant decline of student numbers in self-contained primary gifted classrooms last school year. In 2018-2019, 158 primary age children were identified gifted. And in 2019-2020, only 1 was identified. This is a stark contrast and a clear indication of the board withdrawing support for the gifted children and families in the primary grade. In addition, this change has created extreme inequity across the board, where only families with significant means can have their children tested privately, but many families without the financial means cannot have their children tested and identified during the primary years to access the special education services offered by the board. Based on research, we know that some gifted learners may also have other exceptionalities. Therefore, the equity to access and support through special education services that the board offers is important to all children and families with varied intellectual, behavioral, and communication abilities. In the Special Education Plan Standard number 2, the board's general model for special education, the board states its general philosophy on special education as the Halton District School Board is committed to the principle that learning is a developmental process and children proceed through the stages of development at varying rates. It's also committed to the principle that early identification and intervention to address learning needs is the most effective way to ensure the learner remains confident about their own abilities and is engaged in the schooling process in years to come. ABC wants to work with the board to find ways to support children and families, not only who are identified after the grade 4 screening process, but also who can be nominated for an early assessment in primary grades and be supported by the special education services offered by the board. ABC would like to see the board supporting the early identification by training teachers in primary grades, including kindergarten, to nominate students who are exceptional in intellectual, behavioral, and communication areas. ABC would like the board to continue providing support for self-contained primary gifted classes across the geographic areas. And issue number 2, the gifted self-contained class placement referral process timeline changes. In a memo dated in December 10th, 2018, sent by then Superintendent of Education Student Service, Mark Donovan, the parents would not be invited to a gifted information session unless the parents and students have confirmed to go to self-contained class. As an association that supports bright and gifted children and families in Ontario, ABC has strongly objected to this change because parents need to be informed about their options of different programs and services that support their gifted children before they decide on self-contained class. When only parents who choose to send their parents to the self-contained class are invited to the gifted information session, some families are left behind without properly understanding their options to make the best decision for their children. However, this change has not been revised since it was implemented in 2018-2019. In Special Education Plan Standard Number 2, the Board General Model for Special Education, in a statement of belief, the Board states, "We believe that shared responsibility for meeting the needs of the student necessitates an active partnership involving the student, the family, the community, and the school. It's also ABC's belief that the board and ABC need to work in partnership to support gifted children and families who can better understand the special education services offered by the board, then make an informed decision to best support their children's learning and development. ABC would like to see the board revise the change to the gifted self-contained classroom placement referral process and to invite all families whose children have been identified as gifted to attend the gifted information session before attending SRT. As a strong supporter of high-quality public education, ABC Halton looks forward to working collaboratively with SEAC and with board staff to address the issues identified by our parents and students who need to be served and supported by the exceptional special education services offered by the board."
Thank
Okay.
you. Thank you, Yoli.
Yeah, that is the minority report we would like to file, and with our reason to withdraw for the special education plan this year.
Okay, great. Thank you very much, Yolene. We will make sure that that is noted in the minutes. Before we move on, does anybody have any questions? Tracy.
Hello, thank you. Through you, Madam Chair. My question is, and this just struck me as these points were being raised, is the minority report, do they usually result in removing full approval, or are they related to, or can they be related to specific sections of the spec ed plan? And I'm wondering about that for both of the reports that have been filed, because it seems to me they're both really specific, related to certain sections of the plan, as opposed to maybe there are many other good things in there that associations would be supporting. So I'm just curious about that.
Again, as not necessarily understanding the full process, I would have to probably defer to Colette here. My understanding is that obviously if there's an issue, that each of the associations files a report that goes with the plan to the ministry, but I don't know what happens in terms of individual elements. Colette.
I would have to double check with our expert on Robert's rules, Gail Gortmaker, but it's my understanding that a minority report is filed when there is a vote of non-support for the plan. I'm not sure that you can vote on certain sections of the plan, but I can certainly ask if that's something that ABC is interested in.
And Colette, did you have you had your hand raised earlier? Did you have another point?
Sorry, having a hard time finding my mute button. Thanks, Yelling, for sharing your feedback and concerns around the special education plan with SEAC. Just for the benefit of the group, changes were made to the problem-solving pathway following the special education review and input from SEAC a number of years ago. And this did result in the nomination process for assessments for giftedness going through the problem-solving pathway at the school resource team level. This minority report is one of a series of correspondence that ABC has had with the director and myself. And I appreciate that the changes in the problem-solving pathway that have aligned the process for all students with special education needs are of particular interest for ABC and our families with students with intellectual giftedness. But that said, I'm also aware that the problem-solving pathway is of interest to all of our families and for SEAC as an advisory group. So I believe it is an important discussion for us to have together. And as I offered in the May meeting, we'll bring a presentation to SEAC next year on the problem-solving pathway for further discussion and input. So I do want to provide some assurance, not only to ABC, but to all of you as a SEAC group, that we are committed to hosting that discussion and hearing your input in this forum next year.
Great, thank you very much, Colette. Any other questions? Okay, not seeing any. We will note ABC's change of vote in the minutes, and thank you very much for presenting that, Yolene. And I guess we will move on now to our action items. So item 2.1 tonight is going to be a presentation by Roxana Nagoy, Superintendent of Business Services, on the budget. So welcome, Roxana.
Good evening, and thank you for having me again. And this evening, I also have Jay Chantavang, which is our manager of budget, that is on the line and available to answer any questions you may have. We can take questions throughout the presentation as well as at the end. I'm just going to present my screen, if I can. Just one moment. All right, so I hope that is showing okay on your end. At this point in time, we're happy to present you with a draft budget for the Halton District School Board for next year. And we're going to be focusing a little bit more on the actual special education revenue and expenses. So we'll do a quick update on the budget development process and where we are. Go through the key components for the budget. At the last presentation, we've presented you the information for the current year and the breakdown in expenses and revenues. We now have the updated numbers for next year. And then we'll go through the special education grants and revenues, the revenue sources that complement the special education grant, the special education expenses, and the list of budget additions and new initiatives that have been presented to the board at the Committee of the Whole meeting on May 26th, which also highlight the areas of support for special education and mental health. So in terms of the budget development process, as you'll recall from our meeting in April this year, the budget process starts in December and goes through to the end of June when it's approved by the Board of Trustees. It aligns to our multi-year plan, strategic priorities around equity and inclusion, mental health and well-being for staff and students, learning and achievement, environmental leadership, and Indigenous perspectives and awareness. It aligns with the action items outlined in the operational plan, special education plan. We take a look at our corporate risk profile, which highlight the top risks that we perceive in impeding our ability to achieve the strategic priorities. And we make sure that it's a compliant budget with all the accountability and regulatory compliance that come with it. The budget process, we currently completed the committee of the whole on May 26th. So if you'll see the check mark says the progress has been achieved. We've incorporated the results of the stakeholder consultation. The board report was presented at the April 7th board meeting, and all of these reports and presentations to the committee of the whole as well, they're available on the website under board and budget and financial information. So if you look under that particular page, you will have all the reports and the presentations along the way from December to current date that are posted there. A lot of the slides in this presentation, the trustees on this committee have seen last week. And then we're going to dive a little bit deeper into the special education areas. On tomorrow's night at the board meeting, we're going to be bringing the draft budget, which incorporates the new additions that are proposed here. And it will come back on June 16th for final approval. So with that, we'll go through the key budget components, the updates to these, which are enrollment. Most of our grants for student needs or the revenues, and majority of that is developed and is based on the enrollment of our school board, along with other factors. And we'll go through the revenues and expenses. So in terms of the enrollment, if we compare the projected enrollment for next year to the original budget, which is down here, you will note that we are actually below where we expected to be for last year. And that is a direct impact of the pandemic, where we've seen a significant decline in enrollment, specifically at the entry grades in kindergarten, as well as due to increase in homeschooling and a decrease in international students. Overall, we've also had lower immigration rates and migration into the Halton region. So when we're looking at the enrollment for next year to the actual enrollment, which is the revised estimates for the current year, once we have the October 31st count date, we're looking at an increase of 652. You will note that there is a slight decrease at the elementary panel and a more significant increase at the secondary panel. Most of that is the movement of a grade 8 from the elementary panel is moving into the secondary panel next year, into grade 9, and it's replaced by much lower enrollments at the kindergarten level. We're still assuming status quo on current numbers for international students and lower growth rates, as we are not sure what the immigration and migration patterns were going to be for next year. So in terms of revenues, total revenue for our board, total operating revenue, I should say, because we do have a capital component, which is in addition to this, that are 823 million. Including the accumulated surplus of 7 million. Most of that, 90% is grants for student needs, which is our operating grant from the ministry. So the next few slides just break that down for the revenues for next year. So the grants for student needs, as I mentioned in the last presentation, are made up of the municipal education levies that are collected. And then it's topped up to the formula that is generated provincially for our board, mainly based on enrollment, but also on social demographic factors, as well as other factors such as the number of schools, the distance between schools, whether they're urban or rural, the ground capacity of schools, etc. An additional 1% are what we call other provincial grants or priorities and partnership funds in particular. And this budget contains COVID supports through these priorities and partnership funds. In particular for special education, they are 380,000 for special education and mental health support for another 500,000. So about 880,000 in this other provincial grants. These are one-time in nature. And in addition to that, the requirement is to only look at half of the grant for half the year, as we're waiting for additional information from public health to see whether or not the same supports and the funding will be targeted at the same factors as planned originally. Other revenues include amortization for capital contribution, which is the amortization of our assets, schools, for example. And this is the revenue that offsets a non-cash expense. Other federal grants, which include our language programs for newcomers, tuition fees for international students, rental income, and investment income. School-generated funds are about 1.5% of next year's revenues, which is quite lower than where we usually would see them, around that 3% mark. So that is just an estimate at this point, as we are not sure what direction the co-curricular and extracurricular and fundraising activities will take next year. So this just gives you the numbers behind those percentages so you can see the difference between last year's budget to the current year. So overall, you'll see there's an increase in total revenues of 16.7, and then we do have moves to accumulated surplus, which bring it down to a net of 13.2. And a lot of this is any use of our reserves towards balancing the budget, as well as the education development charges, which is a revenue that we receive for purchasing land for new schools in growth areas. That is brought outside of our operating revenue into this line. So the main changes for the grants for student needs, overall, it's increased year over year about 1.2%. Most of that increase is an increase in the compensation benchmarks of 1%, which has been negotiated, and it's part of the collective agreements. 2% increase for non-salary components, which is the operating costs for our school board to keep up with inflation. There's an adjustment to pupil foundation grant, which is where we have the direct supports for the classroom, and that is for the secondary online learning. So there's a decrease there in funding as we look at that class size being 30 as opposed to the regular class size of 23. In the language allocation, the ESL allocation, there's a time-limited supplement to recognize the decrease in immigration. So it's called the Recent Immigration Supplement, just to assist with school boards providing the same level of support for English as a second language learners, for example. Student transportation grant is maintained at the same level. There's no cost adjustment as it was in previous years. A couple of other things were added to the grants for student needs from the one-time other provincial grants, which include mental health support. For our board, that's 189,000 that was transferred into the GSN, and 15 million in technology. So that is to support additional technology, as we are still going to be looking at virtual school next year, as well as to replace some of the potentially damaged technology that was lended out this year. So that for us is around 400,000. And there's some additional changes and realignments within the grants for student needs as well. So in terms of expenses, most of our expenses are directly aligned with instruction, so 78.4%. Our total expenses, operating expenses, are 816, which are the 823 revenues less the transfer from accumulated service of 7 million. So we do provide you with the breakdown as we did in the prior presentation. I don't want to go through everything in detail. You've seen this before. The percentages have been updated for the expenses to reflect next year's budget. So instruction, directly staff and resources that are directly in the classroom, administration, transportation has been updated as well. And then you can see the other expenses contain that COVID support for priorities and partnership funds. And I just want to mention that some of the additions that we're proposing to the budget that are special education and mental health related from the priorities and partnership funding money for COVID will be reflected here. And they're in addition to the revenue and expenses that we're going to go through in terms of the special education allocation. The expenses overall, just the numeric version of all those slides. So you can see the difference as we compare budget to budget between the years. So where the 13.2 million is, mostly is in instruction and mostly as a result of the compensation benchmark increase of 1%. Salary and non-salary split. Salary and benefits make up 80% of our budget, which is consistent with the slides we've presented you based on the numbers for the current year. And 93% of the salary expenses are directly linked to instruction. Pupil accommodation is the operations, maintenance, and caretaking of the schools. So that's indirectly benefiting our students. And administration is 2%. The non-salary expenses, most of them go towards pupil accommodation, which is the maintenance of our schools and repairs. It does not include the capital component, which is addition, renewal, new school builds. That is in a separate budget than what we're looking at here. This includes more the repairs and maintenance, landscaping, utilities of the schools and school buildings. Other expenses, a lot of that is related to either school generated funds, education development charges, and the partnerships and priority funding that was received. Instructional resources, 20%. Transportation makes 12% of the non-salary expenses, and administration, which includes the maintenance of the admin building, is 2%. So I'll just skip through these. They're there for your information and with a bit more breakdown of each component. And unless there's any question on that part, I have I don't see any new hands up.
No, I think we're fine, Roxana.
All right, so I will walk you through the special education grants and revenues for next year. As a quick reminder, the special education grant is made up of 6 components, which are listed here. Any amount that is not spent on special education eligible expenditures is deferred into the following year, where we see deferred revenue would be in the area of special equipment amount, the SIA amount, which is enveloped in itself within the special education envelope for that specialized equipment. The special education grant is $1 million more than what was the projection of the budget last year, even though there's fewer enrollment when we look budget to budget. It's mainly that increase is mainly as a result of the increase in the compensation benchmark of 1%. Other areas that are complementing the special education allocation includes the pupil foundation allocation, where there is support for PSSP personnel, as well as education assistant. There's a little amount there. There's a cost adjustment and qualification experience grant, which adjusts for the salary from the average salary that is funded to the actual grid of individual teachers. The transportation allocation is also covering the special education programs, and the mental health and well-being and the board administration and governance grant also provides support for the office of the superintendent. I see a hand.
Thanks, Roxanne. I just got a really quick question, even though I've said I'm not going to say that anymore. You say that there's $1 million more than last year that is to match up with the 1% compensation benchmark. So that 1% in dollar figures, is it similar to the $1 million or is it more or less?
Perhaps Jay may take a quicker look at the components. I would think it's more than 1 million because there's also a reduction in enrollment, which reduces the base. It's a portion of it is based on enrollment, so less enrollment will give you less funding. However, the 1% on the salary components, when most of the special education allocation is salary, is going to look like a lot more than 1% of the 94 million that we have in that allocation. Right. But I don't have the particular breakdown, and maybe I will let Jay in the background have a look at that as I go through the next couple of slides.
So sorry, if you go back to the last slide, I'm just wondering, so in the last slide, you talk about the $1 million extra dollars. 1 million more, but mainly incorporating the compensation benchmark. So are those equitable amounts, or is that still giving us a deficit because we've got a lot more money that's going towards compensation than that extra $1 million?
There's a lot more money going towards compensation than the extra $1 million, because the $1 million is the net between the two budgets. The allocation between last year's budget and this year's budget. And it also incorporates about 352 students less than what we thought we're going to have in the budget last year. So when we ran the numbers for this allocation in last year's budget, and we expected that growth to continue as a normal year, that was in the base of that allocation. This year, we're showing less students than where we thought we were going to be last year. At that time, and yet we have 1 million more overall. So this is the net, which means the 1% increase in the salary and benchmark is more than 1 million. It's offset by a reduction due to the enrollment. What is that particular ups and downs? That's something we would need to look at our ministry forms between the two and see if we can come up with some quick explanations. But having said that, in a slide below that I'm going to get to in a few minutes, we do show the excess of overall expenses and overall revenue, including the special education grant, which is one component, and then there's additional grants that support special education. And even when we put everything together, there's still a deficit of about 16 million.
Okay, I was just wondering, because I know the government spin would be, we're giving you this extra money, but really doesn't cover the needs that we have anyway. So thank you.
No, it does not cover. There has been a reallocation of this funding in the past, which they maintained the funding pot and reallocated amongst boards. At that point in time, we lost about $20 million. And no, we have not received that back. We're getting a little bit back as we grow, but as we grow, we add more resources and more supports for our students. And certainly, they would be above and beyond what that formula generates. And 1% on the benchmark for benefits is not enough either, because this year the statutory benefits for CPP and EI have gone up, and this has been maintained flat at that 1%. So it's not capturing that additional increase for our board overall, that particular increase that we have to remit for our employees is 1.6 million, not just for special education, but for all of our staff. So that hasn't been included in the 1% compensation benchmark for the funding formula. So I don't see any other hands. The next few slides just walk you through those 6 main components of the grant. The special education per pupil amount being the largest, and that is based on enrollment. So this is where you would see a reduction if the enrollment is lower. So that's about 52 million, which is more than half of our grant. The special equipment amount, another 3 million. The differentiated special education needs amount, which is that statistical measure of variability, and looking at the multidisciplinary team supports that was added in, that's 32.4 million. The special incidents portion for additional supports for students with more extreme exceptionalities is 2.4. We have the Education and Community Partnership Program, which are students in care facilities, 3.3 million, which we run for the region. The behavior expertise amount for another 900,000. Again, this is enrollment based. So that will give us that 94.4, I believe, 94.4 million, which is the actual special education grant. In addition to that, we generate grant for the self-contained classes. So that's 8.6 million for a total special education grant of 103. There are additional funding sources, as we've mentioned, within the GSN and the supports for student funding, which were negotiated in collective agreements. So all together, when we put them all together, it's 111 million and 0.5, and it does not include the 880,000 that I mentioned in priorities and partnership funding for COVID supports, just because of how they show within our forms, and they are reported on separately to the ministry. So they are in addition to this. With regards to expenses, we have a few slides that break down the expenses, and they are looking at the budget for next year to the revised budget this year. So our latest expenses and latest numbers, which you've seen in the presentation in April. So it's just a breakdown of some of the expenses, starting with the students in care facilities expenses, educational assistance and textbooks and supplies. You will see some decreases, which are mainly as a result of some of the contingencies that were mapped there for this year for COVID, which are now part of the base into next year's budget. The professional, paraprofessional staff salaries and supplies, and the certs and the consultants and coordinators and consultants refer to our special education resource teachers mostly, and instructional program leads that would have a special education portfolio. So when we put all the expenses together, we have 127.9 million, which is more than 111 million in revenue. So in addition to that, there's costs outside of this 127 million. The transportation for special education programs comes in at 7.4 million. And then the administration grant covers an additional 300,000. So when we look at the actual shortfall for the education, for the special education envelope, we are looking at the total revenue that we've looked at with the expenses. It's giving us a gap of 16.4 million. There is a working group that has been, I think, set aside during COVID that we're hoping will reevaluate the funding formula for special education and try to update some of the parameters to keep up with the increasing needs and costs of the school boards. But there hasn't been any update from that group during this year that I can provide. Staffing compares next year to this current year. However, it does not include some of the staff that are, not some, all of the staff in the new initiatives that are proposed in the next few slides. So what are some of the budget considerations? Overall, the budget that we're proposing for next year is a compliant budget, which is a deficit budget within 1% of our provincial allocation or the provincial grants for student needs amount. So our budget is currently at 5.5 million deficit. It includes the addition of 16.6 full-time equivalent staff positions due to growth and staffing ratio requirements, and 50 positions that will go through in the next few slides, which are to support COVID initiatives as well as multi-year plan initiatives through the year. There's going to be additional positions that we identify as we complete the staffing organizations, as we get a better number on the virtual enrollment for elementary and secondary, and where we would allocate additional teachers, educational assistant supports, early childhood educators, and potentially some additional school support and school administration for virtual schools. So there's still an amount that we've left unallocated to actual positions until that is complete over the next few weeks. In terms of the new initiatives and COVID supports, what we have in the next few slides amount to 7.6 million in additions. The next two slides show the proposed additions that are focused on COVID support from the funding that was received for our board for that particular one-time priorities and partnership funding for COVID. And then the next slide shows the new initiatives from reserves to support a multi-year plan. So sometimes you'll see, for example, child and youth counselors appearing in on both slides because they will be funded differently as well. I see Colette has her hand up.
Thanks, Roxanne. I wonder if I could just speak to a couple of the special education staff pieces here on this slide, if that's all right. So you'll notice that there are 2 speech and language pathologists that we are adding next year for a temporary measure. This is to address some of the anticipated learning recovery needed in our early years, particularly around early literacy and oral language. Our speech and language pathologist will be working with some special education staff as well as a school program department staff to develop a program around phonological awareness, a screening tool to identify who would benefit from a greater intervention, and then providing some training and support measures to our special education resource teachers to really target that need in a small group. The other piece that I want to draw your attention to is the instructional resource teacher. This instructional resource teacher will support students with a learning disability and that are not in a self-contained class. So we have 5 right now that support reading development within self-contained classes. And our hope was to, with those 5, expand the program beyond self-contained classes this year. But with some of the challenges with COVID, we weren't able to do that. So we are adding 1 to the complement. And this particular person would target those reading supports for students with learning disabilities beyond self-contained classes. Thanks, Roxana.
Thank you for that. I'm just looking what else we have here. We do have some training as well at the bottom that is related to special education. And on the third slide, I actually grouped together just the special education and mental health supports from the 2 slides so that you can see that. Of course, we're going to be looking at the staffing needs that are required out of this 2.7 million that is remaining to be allocated as well. So the next slide shows which additions are going to be supporting a multi-year plan from reserves. And you'll see again, there's a child and youth counselors, there's social workers, there are additional, I'm just trying to see, just the structured learning pilot and additional resource teachers for special education, which I'll go through in a minute. So I know, Colette, you wanted to speak to these as well, but I have them in the next slide, all of them on one slide. So I'm going to maybe just focus on that, but you do have the entire additions to the budget listed here. And then when we pull them together from those 2 slides and we focus on special education and mental health, this is the combination of the 2 slides that Colette wanted to go through some of these. And then you'll see the literacy, numeracy, special education supports as well broken down here and how many they total between the 2 slides. So with that, I'll pass it back to Colette.
Thanks, Roxana. So I talked about the one special education teacher targeting reading. There are 2 additional teachers who will be housed out of our school programs department, but will be collaborating on an initiative that will be run jointly between special education and school programs on grade 7 to 10 math intervention. We'll be focusing on the math interventions for students with learning disabilities, but these IRTs that will be in the school programs department will be supporting students in small groups who are not necessarily identified, but who are struggling and have some learning needs that can be best addressed in a small group. The addition of the educational assistants will depend on the virtual school and the needs that present in the virtual school versus in bricks and mortar. Our child and youth counselors are, of course, to support some of the anticipated needs around mental health and well-being as students come back to school, whether that's in a virtual school or in our bricks and mortar schools. The 2 speech and language pathologists I've already spoken about, as well as the structured learning class, which was brought here a couple of months ago. That just as a reminder, that's 3 classes that will support students with autism, one in the north, one in the east, and one in the west. And that class will have the support of a speech and language pathologist, as well as a communicative disorders assistant. So we're quite excited about that project next year. And I think that's it, Roxana.
Just a quick note, we do have the math. There's 3 in total. 2 are from, to Colette's points, 2 are from reserve that we've identified, and 1 through the special education priority and partnership funding. So we were actually able to accommodate the 3, which is great. And I believe that covers all of these additional additions. And with that, that's our last slide. I will turn it to you for any additional questions. And thank you very much for your time this evening.
Thank you very much, Roxana, for a detailed presentation. Does anybody have any questions? Just checking. I'm not seeing any questions at this time.
Hi, this is Yaling, and I don't know, this is a question maybe Roxana or Colette can answer. On your previous slide, there was a program called Nature's Nears program. Nature's Near program lead. Can one of you speak about that program? Is that a new programming initiative?
Certainly, that is one of the outdoor education programs that we offer. It is not a new program. In the past, we've had the Bronte Creek program, which was reduced, and we call an HS-NEAR program currently. This program lead currently exists in our budget, but it was a temporary position as we were transitioning between the two programs, and we're proposing to make that position permanent, and the program permanent on an ongoing basis.
So is this program only offered to the students with special needs, or this is the program, offered to all students at the board?
This is available to all students at the board, not just with special needs. It isn't a special education program, so this is available to all students. It is a secondary program, and Colette may correct me if I'm wrong. It's a secondary program, an outdoors secondary program for students. It has capacity, of course, so we cannot accommodate everybody. However, it is available to all students.
Okay, but this program is on a special education budget? No. This,
so just, that's a good point. Just as a clarification for everyone, slide 38 and slide 39 are all of the additions to the budget outside, include special education needs in some regard, but they're all of them, even outside of special education. So we just wanted the committee to be aware of the changes budget to budget that we're proposing, that trustees will be reviewing and approving in June. And then from these slide 38 and 39, I picked and I combined those that are special education related, and they are right here on this slide 40.
Great.
So these are the special education additions.
Thank you. Thank you for the clarification.
My pleasure.
Great, thank you for that. Are there any more questions for Roxana? I'm not seeing any at this time. So thank you so much, Roxana, for coming in and presenting this to us. Obviously, lots of new work going on and proposed in the budget. Yeah, obviously a lot of work gone on behind it. So thank you very much for coming and presenting that to us tonight.
Thank you for having us, and have a good evening.
All right, take care. Thank you. Okay, so now after that presentation, we're at item 3.0. It's the SEAC discussion and question period. If anybody has any specific questions or topics they'd like to raise, could you indicate so in the chat box? Sarah.
Sorry, I was just typing it out in the chat box. No, sorry about that. I just have a question apropos of nothing, but I know that the student mental health and well-being has sort of split, right, from the special ed piece. And I'm just wondering will the needs and supports continue for mental health still be continued to be addressed by SEAC, or will there be another venue for that? I was just sort of, like I said, out of nowhere, just something I've been thinking about. Thanks.
That's a great question, Sarah. We are in two departments with two separate superintendents. However, with a well-being strategy and some of the staffing falls under the funding of special education and lives in the special education plan. So it's certainly appropriate here for updates around mental health and well-being and any piece tied to those supports, that funding. Where I'm not able to answer the question, I can certainly get the answer. And I do check in with them before the SEAC to see if they have anything to include in the superintendent's report.
Okay, great. Thank you for that.
And so just to add to that, Colette, will there be an opportunity in the new, in September, October time to get a presentation on how that new department is running and kind of supports that are available?
Yes, absolutely. And there will be a new superintendent assigned to that portfolio, as Mark is, of course, retired now. And so maybe we can give that new superintendent a couple months to get their feet wet, and then we have them perhaps mid-year. But we'll add that to our list of things to bring to this group.
Great, thank you very much. Hello, Mr. Miller. Very welcome. Good to see you.
Thank you, Alison.
Yeah, lovely to see you before you head off.
Well, still a little bit. I'm not really heading off just quite yet, but I
Okay.
will be. So I just I just wanted to come on to thank all of you for not just this year, but many of you are longtime members of SEAC, and some are new. But I see Diane's on the call, my friend Diane, who's been around, I'll just say for a long time. Let's leave that for a while.
Yeah, don't make it too long there, Stuart.
But I really want to thank all of you for the work that you do for the board. I know that we're not always able to address the issues you bring in the manner in which you feel they should be addressed. And I wish we could all the time, but sometimes that's a challenge. It's difficult, but I certainly appreciate the honesty, the transparency, and the kind of holding our feet to the fire. Because, you know, I'll be honest, there's still so much room to improve for students with special needs in achievement and so many other areas. But there's huge progress. It's coincidental that I'm talking to you tonight, but I visited 2 of our CPPs today. I was up in Georgetown, and I was at Craig Kielburger. And it was so lovely to see these kids in the schools with the EAs and the teachers and interacting. So, and a lot of that stuff they do is a direct result of the work of SEAC. So, Alison, I want to thank you and everyone else. And I know I'm retiring in a couple of months, but I can't tell you how important the work is that you do in the counsel and advice you provide to Colette and Sean and the rest of the staff, and have done for many years. Some of you have been there since David Bogue was the superintendent of special education or student services. And now it's a lot of new people. You guys have done remarkable work. And I know that many of you have challenges personally. And it speaks volumes for you that you're able to come to these and advise a board that can move it for about the 18 to 20,000 students we have on IEPs. So, but you know what? When you move the kids on IEPs, you move all 66,000 of our students. It's not just the students on IEPs. The work you do benefits every single one of them. So that's really all I wanted to do, Alison, was just come on and thank all of you for your great work. And I know that I will be in my transition speaking with the new director around the great SEAC that we have in this board, because I think you guys are quite remarkable. And I'm not just saying it, I really do think you're quite remarkable. So, you know, you judge a society on how you help those who most need the help. And that's what you have been doing all these years and continue to do. So thank you.
Right, well, thank you. I mean, obviously, this is our last meeting of the year. And so we would like as SEAC to thank you for all of your hard work and dedication on behalf of our students and all students within the board, and to wish you all the best in your new chapter of life, whatever that may hold. And I hope you take all our best wishes with you and enjoy, as I say, the next chapter.
I do, and thank you for that, Alison.
Yeah, you need a rest after this last year and a half.
Maybe I'll come back as a SEAC member.
Yeah. Great. Well, thank you so much
Thank you,
for
Alison.
joining us. Yeah, take care. And we will continue with our meeting.
Yeah, and I'm sorry I'm not really dressed appropriately, but I thought, what the heck,
yeah.
it's the last one. I'll wear a t-shirt.
Well, isn't this Zoom? I mean, I'm wearing shorts, you know. We've got people are only dressed up from the top, so it doesn't really matter.
Okay, thanks.
Right. Take care then. Bye. Okay, so there was one other question, which was from Yarlene, which was discussing new member orientation and training. So Yarlene, would you like to raise your point?
Thank you, Alison. And so everybody know that I'm new, and Jane and I are both new into SEAC. And so this is my third meeting. So that's why I want to raise the question for the new member training, because, based on my experience that, with a school council or other board, and every board or council, there's different bylaws and procedures and regarding, how we conduct our meeting, and all of that. And I know that, I have spoke with Colette, and so she will be offering training and in the fall. So I'm really looking forward to that. But in the meantime, I don't know would be appropriate to make a recommendation, since now we're in the budget discussion to the board, and regarding whether there is money allocated to develop a manual and for SEAC, committee members. So I know that the SEAC committee commences when the new trustees are elected, and so it goes for the 4 years. However, as both Jan and I are coming to SEAC and in the middle of the term, and so perhaps it's not possible for board to conduct the new training for every single member. But I think, it might be worthwhile to consider a recommendation to the board, maybe put the resources and to create a manual. And so when there's the training is not possible, but there is a manual can be, given to the new member, and so they can get familiar with the process and the policies and bylaws. So just wanted to throw that, here and to the committee. And I'm happy to see if there are any comments or suggestions.
Great. Colette.
Sorry, there was a really loud motorcycle that was in my room there. Thanks, Yellen, for raising this. With only being one meeting ahead of you in my newness, it was not on my radar at all in terms of onboarding new SEAC members. But as we saw in the chat box, there's certainly a fair number who are new, and particularly new since the last training, which was, I believe, in January 2019. So I'm happy to do something as a small group in the fall. And then moving forward, I don't know if it would take the form of a manual, but certainly an onboarding package, so to speak, that could be self-directed, and new members that come in midterm can follow this self-directed piece, so that they feel like they're in the know in terms of the processes and things.
I think that's a great idea, Yarlene. James, you had a hand up.
Yeah, I think it's a great idea too. When I joined, I felt pretty lost, and I think it would be nice to have perhaps like a Google website or something like that, even something, that's self-directed, that doesn't take too much, paper or work, or, but just a guide of some sort, I think would be excellent. I would be willing to help if you need someone to help on that.
Yeah, that's great. I think that's a wonderful suggestion. As you say, number of organizations change representatives as circumstances change, and to be as effective as possible. It's always important that we're up to date with what is expected of us as a group. So yeah, Colette, if you could lead that would be fantastic. And obviously James, anybody else will support you as needed. Great. Okay, so with that, we're now at item 4.0, communications to SEAC, and the first item is the superintendent's report. We've all received the written report from Colette, and if Colette, you want to provide us with a brief summary, that would be fantastic.
Absolutely. This week is National Accessibility Week, with tomorrow being Red Shirt Day in support of Easter seals. We have many summer learning opportunities. I won't go through them all because, as you can see from the printed report, there's a lot there, and something to meet everyone's need in terms of all of our different learner profiles. And I don't know if Sean has the number off the top of his head, but he did give me the number today around how many registrations we have for summer learning, and it is quite a significant number, 1,295 registrations for our summer programs. So that's certainly going to be a huge benefit to our students in the coming weeks. I'm sure by now you've all heard about our plans for the next school year in terms of offering both a remote learning model and an in-person learning model. So parents have the ability to select their model up until tonight at midnight. And they only select if they are choosing the remote model. So no answer means you're coming back to bricks and mortar. Our elementary schools will be organized with in-person and remote classes. So we're not going to run a separate virtual school for elementary. The classes will be embedded into our bricks and mortar schools all across our region. And the students will be transferred to that school, whether they're in a virtual class or in an in-person class. Our elementary schools will run the school day of that particular school with the Rotary and subjects taught by specialists where that's applicable. We will be permitted to go back to small group instruction opportunities that we weren't able to do this year due to cohorting. And we are able to return to a more experiential and hands-on learning type model. So we're happy to see some of those COVID restrictions fade a little bit and return to school as we knew it, a little bit more like it was. For our secondary schools, we are required by the Ministry of Education to run a quadmester format for the first semester, or at least only 2 courses at one time. And so students will take 2 courses, 100 each day, 150 minutes in length, 5 days a week, both courses in person. So we're happy that we're not running A and B cohorts next year. It will be full classes, 2 a day, and both in person. With the public health plans to have our students 12 and up fully vaccinated for all those who wish to be vaccinated prior to the start of school, we do hope to see a return to school of life that includes athletics, co-curriculars, and a breadth of program opportunities. And then in addition, we hope to see that the return of a 4-course semester format like we're used to returns to second semester, but that will be a decision that will be made by Public Health and the Ministry of Education. So as the survey closes tonight, starting tomorrow, Special Education Services will be reviewing the registrations for remote learning and determining which classes will need to be running in those remote environments, as well as if there's any impact on in-person classes. During this period of time when the survey was open, we paused all student transitions because we didn't want to start a transition process of a student moving from a self-contained class back into the regular class or vice versa, and the parents making a change in their model choice. So we've paused everything once we know where students are going to go in terms of that model choice selection. Those transitions will resume, and special education staff and school staff will be working on those for the remainder part of this school year. We also have some ministry funding so that we can support schools in running some transition opportunities for students returning to school at the end of August. And a good news update around our special education track meet. I shared with you, I think last month, that this track meet's running June 14th to 18th. It will be in class or remote or asynchronous, depending on the needs of the learner and the family and where the students are learning. We have guest speakers for each day, including our very own Director Miller, Ryan, a Special Olympics ambassador, Carmelina Moscato, a 3-time Olympic medalist, Terry Dunfield, a former TFC player, and Deshaun Williams, a future Paralympian. So it sounds like it's going to be an outstanding event. We have 66 classes registered, which include nearly 500 athletes, ranging from kindergarten all the way up to our CPP program. We have O Canada, the Athlete's Oath, and the Land Acknowledgement videos that have been submitted from 15 different classes. And ribbons have been mailed to our schools and to homes for our virtual students, including brailled ribbons for our blind and low vision students. And that's all I have by way of an update, but happy to take any questions.
Great, thank you. So Margot, you had your hand up.
Hi, so I just have questions around the summer learning. I'm just wondering, my question there was, are there caps on the learning? And then as you spoke of the Special Olympics, are these summer learning opportunities virtual, in person, hybrid? What is the sort of the options that parents have?
So all of our summer learning opportunities are virtual. You may know that Gary Allen was offering a choice of in-person and virtual, and based on parent response, they've all moved to virtual. So it appears at this point in time that's what our families prefer for their summer learning programs. In terms of caps on our programs, we are going to do our best to meet demand. I think where we may struggle is finding enough staff to run that many programs for that many students. So as long as we can find the staff to run the programs, we believe that we have the funding to cover it. And so we hope to meet the needs of all of our families.
Yeah, sorry, I'm just noticing Yalin's note in the chat box. I don't know, Yalin, it sort of feeds on to from my question. So sorry, Allison.
Yeah, no, I was just going to raise that as well, that Yolene mentioned that the summer learning programs have been were closed on May the 28th, but some parents didn't receive the communication from schools. Yolene, do you want to comment on that?
Yes, actually, that's something that, I want to tack on to Margot's question. And I was, parents reached out and yesterday, and because to us, because the registration for the summer program was closed on Friday, I think last week. And because those programs are so popular, and I think the board offer them every year. It's so popular among the students. I have to, really say that, you can see this is great work that the board has been doing. And so they're highly in demand. And so when some parents didn't get communication from school, and then they found out that they missed the deadline, and they get very frustrated. And so they reach out to us and to tell us that they didn't get anything from school, and why, as an association, we didn't announce to them. And so that is something that, maybe that I'm thinking that, if the board can inform the association earlier and about those programs, and so we can get the message out to the parents. And so I know sometimes, like Colette said, because they're in high demand, and so the board probably cannot accommodate everyone, but I think the frustration coming from that, the communication. And so that is just something I want to add to that.
Great, thank you, Colette.
Yeah, thanks, Yeling. And we can take that back and look at whether there's something we can improve in that process, and certainly share with associations when it's launched. That some can certainly be done. I know our instructional program leaders work very closely with schools and have been prompting them and making sure that communication has happened. So I'm sorry to hear that there may have been someone that was missed through all of that. We have been accommodating any requests that have come in up until this point. But we are now moving forward with the staffing of our program, but we were as flexible as we could be on that deadline.
Great, thank you. Sarah, your hand.
Yeah, I just wanted to, I was also going to mention the dissemination of information to parents. We were fortunate, like personally, the CERT reached out to us about the summer learning. But yeah, just in general, because even sort of trying to Google it or get information, you don't really know what's out there. But you've covered that. So the other question I had was in terms of the Special Olympic track meet, and if that is only available to self-contained classes. I know my son participated last year as an individual with the video montage that they did. So yeah, I just didn't know how it was being done this year.
Yeah, that's a good question, Sarah. Thank you for raising that. It's not limited to students in self-contained classes. CERTs supporting students in regular class placements can nominate their student to be involved. And they would either do the activities with their class or do them asynchronously or with a group in the school for in-person learners. There's no limitations on those self-contained placements.
Okay, great. Thank you.
So Colette, I just have one last question. I think I'm the last person. Just a quick question. Did I understand correctly that in the elementary system, it's going to be hybrid learning? So basically, was it that? Am I correct? So the teacher will be teaching both the class and the virtual, or was I mistaken?
So no, and I'm sorry if that wasn't very clear. So there will be, within a bricks and mortar school, there will be in-person classes and remote classes. It won't be the teacher teaching both simultaneously. It will be in one classroom, there will be kids, and in the next class, it will be the teacher with the kids connecting remotely. But we think that the students embedded into a school and served by that school administrator and that school support staff will be well served, but they will be completely dedicated to a remote class.
Okay, great. But that teacher could be teaching children from multiple schools, depending on the numbers, obviously.
Yes, that's correct. For students in a school where there's very few who have chosen remote, those students would transfer to a school where they offer the grades remotely that are needed. Okay, great. And will that then become their home school for the purpose of the time that they are, and are they allowed to switch? Or are they, like, you do it for the year, you're done? So I think your first question was, will that be their home school? Yes. So the kids won't be shared between two schools. They will be transferred to the school that's hosting their class. There will be 2 opportunities to switch. The first will be around, I think it's October 14th. So we typically do what we call a reorganization day in September, where we kind of measure the bums in seats, so to speak, to the staffing and make adjustments to school organizations based on classes either being under enrolled or over enrolled, and then we adjust the staffing. So we won't be doing that in September this year coming up. That date has been pushed out to October 14th. So that will give families an opportunity to change learning models at that point in time, and we'll do what we call our September reorg process at the same time. So this hopefully will reduce the impact on the number of changes for our for our students who aren't making a model choice change, but are impacted by reorganizations when others make a model choice change. The second opportunity will be at the end of the first term. I don't have the exact date, but it's around the end of January. And that will be the last opportunity to switch models.
Great, thank you very much. Sophia, you have a question.
I did really quick. I'm sorry, apologies if I missed this. So the summer learning, I know someone asked that, not everybody heard about it in advance. So two-part question. One, the people that did register, when do they find out if they did get a spot? And two, will there be any more opportunities for families that missed out to register?
So at this point in time, we haven't heard of any families that haven't been accommodated. So if there is a family that hasn't been accommodated, we ask that they reach out to their CERT, and we will certainly do what we can. We are in the process of staffing that program. And so confirmation around if parents had a specific date selection, all of that will be confirmed in the next, I'm going to say probably week or so.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Okay, great. Are there any more questions? Jen.
I just have one question tied to the learning models that you talked about for September. Can we assume that those learning the classes would include all classes? So self-contained would be included in that, similar to this year?
That is what we're planning for. I mean, it will. We'll need to be looking at the numbers that have chosen the different models to make sure our classes are viable. But it's certainly our intention.
Okay, thank you.
Great. Any more questions? Okay, well, thank you. If we're moving now to item 4.2, association reports. Are there any reports that any members would like to present? Melissa.
Hi, good evening. I don't have a huge report, and Colette already mentioned it. I just want to mention that this week is the National Accessibility Week, and tomorrow in particular is Easter Seals flagship day for Red Shirt awareness about accessibility and inclusiveness in Canadian society. The Easter Seals website, I will post the link in the chat here, is great with a lot of resources for staff and students to access lots of really interesting things to do. They have the profiles already for you to post on social media. They've got a pledge for how you're going to support accessibility moving forward, and lots of really great things to do, just even to look at. There's a lot of great videos and things like that. So I will share that in the chat and hope that you'll see somebody in a red shirt tomorrow and you'll know what it's all about. So thanks very much.
Great, thank you very much. So on behalf of the Learning Disabilities Association, I'd just like to let you know that we are running a variety of summer programs this year for students with learning disabilities. We have literacy and numeracy programs running daily for 1 hour a day for 3 weeks in each of July and August, as well as the 2-week social program. We also have a youth-to-youth program, which is gaining momentum and creates a safe space for youth aged 14 to 25 to share their experience of living with learning disabilities and to connect with like-minded individuals. And their next Stronger Together meeting will be held on June the 9th. Also, to let everybody know, we're working with the other LDA chapters across Ontario to run a parent conference on learning disabilities online in August. And if anybody would like more information on any of our programs, it's available at www.ldahh.ca. Any other comments? Margot, is your hand up? No, okay. Any other comments or questions? Oh, yes, Colette.
I would just like to echo Director Miller's comments and express my gratitude for all of your work with SEAC and supporting students not only in our schools, but in our community. And I also appreciate your support for my induction into SEAC and your patience. And as I learn about all of the things in special education and learn about the function of SEAC, I appreciate your patience and support. So thank you.
Great. Thank you very much. Okay, so we're now at item 4.3, the Trustees Report.
Okay, thank you. Through you, Madam Chair. Our brief report is as follows, and trustee colleagues jump in when I miss something. Firstly, I'm really excited to announce, and you may have seen it via press release, that 3 superintendents and a director of education have now been hired to fill out the senior team. We welcome Dean Barnes, Claire Proto, and Ayman Flahat. They will be our new supervisory officers, so Colette's colleagues. And we're also very excited to welcome Curtis Ennis as the new Director of Education. And Curtis comes to us from the Toronto District School Board, so a really large and diverse board. And his current portfolio, he's an associate director, and his role includes equity, well-being, and school improvement. So these are really a great match for the board's needs, particularly as we move out of the pandemic and into the whatever the great future is going to look like. So Curtis starts on August the 1st. So by the time we're all meeting as a group again, he hopefully will be able to pop in and introduce himself. I want to let you know that trustees collaborated to host Halton Education Action. We're calling it 2.0. You may recall in 2019, just about the same time in the calendar year, we hosted some community meetings around the class size, potential class size changes to really kind of push back on some of the provincial proposals. And 2.0 took place in May, and we hosted a session that was very well attended. And the subject matter was the leaked proposal to expand TVO and TFO's mandate for online and virtual learning, and to really dilute, the role of boards in online learning, which is someplace where a lot of local expertise has been developed. So the concern was that we needed to do something quick because there had been some signals that perhaps something was going to be passed in this sitting of the legislature, which rises this week. So I think that hopefully through all of the advocacy to kind of take a step back and work collaboratively with education stakeholders across the province, that the ministry is doing a bit of a reconsider, although I can't confirm that, but I look forward to being able to confirm that. Trustees have also recently conveyed concerns to the minister regarding the delayed release of the de-streamed math, grade 9 math curriculum. So that's supposed to be coming online in September, and it's still not released to boards yet. So you can appreciate that staff have been going full on around the calendar since the pandemic started. And so it's just probably not the best way to launch into what can be a wonderful opportunity, hopefully, for students to partake in that de-streamed grade 9 curriculum. So we have requested that that curriculum be released forthwith. A report is coming to the board meeting tomorrow in support of student advocacy for menstrual equity across Ontario. And you may know that at the HDSB this year we have done a pilot that saw free products in key spaces at schools so that students could access them in a safe place in their own time. And the feedback was really good, was really great. And so our student trustees, Joanna, I think I might have supposed to let you talk on this one, sorry, or to lob it over. Anyway, the student trustees are really trying to elevate that to the provincial level and do some advocacy there, and hopefully that will work out. Also tomorrow in the June package, we have the operational plan, the special education plan, educational development charges bylaw amendment, boundary reviews for Milton Southwest number 11 school, and the budget. So it's a bit of a hectic time. And certainly trustees heard your comments around the spec ed plan and the budget. So we'll be carrying those forward to our colleagues at the board table. And Joanne, I'll just turn it over to you for the symposium.
Thank you. As the student trustee mentor, it gives me great pleasure to provide you with an update on a very successful Halton Youth Leadership Symposium that was conducted virtually last week on Friday. This is the first time it was hosted virtually, and so I think that really enabled many more students to participate. The symposium is aimed at students in grades 7 and 8 who show some interest in leadership. Approximately 260 such students participated in this virtual event. The keynote speakers included, of course, our director, Stuart Miller, and the HDSB Human Rights and Equity Advisor, Dr. Jewel Amoa, along with Dylan Mendes, a very vibrant Canadian youth speaker. There were 2 rounds of workshops completely designed and delivered by student senators, and these included topics of current issues, equity and diversity, financial leadership and entrepreneurship, high school survival guide, mental health, and public speaking. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much for that update.
Quite done.
Oh, okay, Margot, carry on.
Just two more quick things. So at this next trustee meeting, we will be having our final not this next trustee meeting, but the following so 2 weeks after tomorrow, we will be having our final Inspire Awards presentation. I just want to encourage you all to continue to look for those people within the realms of HDSB that truly inspire us to feel good about what's going on in our school system. It is always open, even during the summer when we are out. The forms are online for you to fill out. And it is one of the best parts for me of our board meetings when we have them. It's that feel-good factor, which really, really is great. So I do encourage you all to try and get out there and think about those great people that we have in our system who sometimes may not be recognized for all that they do. And finally, on behalf of all the trustees, I want to wish you all a safe, happy, and healthy summer. Hopefully getting outside, enjoying the fresh air, and getting that one step closer to getting back to where we were in 2020. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Yes, it would be wonderful once our children get jabbed and we all get our second vaccination. Hopefully we can get back to some kind of normality. So yes, same wishes to everybody here. So next item, 4.4, are there any committee reports at the time? This time I'll go through the list of standing committees and ask for any updates. The Parent Involvement Committee. Anything from the Parent Involvement Committee? Not at this time. Accessibility Coordinating Committee.
Yes. Marga and I attended the meeting. It was really a very interesting meeting. One of the things that I want to share with the committee is some slides, which I'm going to ask Lorna to attach to the minutes on improvements made to White Oak School to have a gym accessible to all students. It was just really quite inspiring slides, and I'd like to share them with you. That's, Marga, have I left anything out? No, that's it. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Lucille, and we look forward to seeing that. Tracy.
Hi, yes. Lucille just actually reminded me of something when she mentioned White Oak School, and it's probably something that I forgot to mention earlier. And you may have seen in the media or on social media recently initiatives from 2 students at White Oaks whose lived experience includes racism and being the target of numerous racist acts. So I just wanted to let you know that those 2 students are coming to the board tomorrow night so that we can hear firsthand and really listen deeply and reaffirm the board's commitments to dismantling all racism in schools. And trustees will be, those students presented to both the Police Services Board in the region of Halton recently as well. So trustees will also be reaching out to the region just to hopefully instill some greater levels of collaboration, because these are really whole community issues that I believe will be best served tackling together.
Great, thank you very much for that update, and look forward to hearing what happens there. So it was just a question raised in the chat, and I guess this is for Colette. Do we know if students are going to be required to get vaccinations to attend school, if they're 12 to 17 at this point, similar as to having to have proof of a MMR or chickenpox vaccination?
So the short answer is no. It is not a mandatory vaccination. Then that is determined by public health. But I would say that even when a vaccine is mandatory, there are exclusions in that a family can object, and that goes on the record with public health. Schools no longer verify vaccination records of students. We support public health in their enforcement of the ISPA, which is the Immunization of School Pupils Act. And you may have become aware over the last number of years that we've implemented public health's suspension program for students who have not been fully immunized or have not registered their objection with public health. So, so the short answer is no, it's not a mandatory vaccine. Whether it will become one, we don't know. But even if it were to become one, it's not something at this point in time that schools would be enforcing, or the school board, and that there is a route for those who object to a vaccine in general.
Great, thank you very much for the clarification. And so when, just a quick question was, when did the school stop asking for the records?
So this was a few years ago. Really, the only reason why schools collected the records was to pass the information on to public health, so public health could keep up-to-date records. What public health found was that it produced a duplication of work, because we were submitting parent paperwork and parents had already submitted their paperwork through their channels. So now public health has asked us to stop collecting those records on their behalf, and it's now solely done through the public health portal.
Great. Thank you very much for that clarification. Okay, and then the final standing committee we have is Equity and Inclusive Education Advisory Steering Committee. Been any meetings and updates from that?
Diane speaking. We have a meeting coming up on Thursday. So out of that, I can send something quick to Lorna that she can attach to the minutes or send it out after.
Great. Thank you very much. Okay, so now at item 5.0, are there any particular items that we might need to add on to our next agenda or order paper? We do have an ongoing list of items that we're collecting up. So as Colette mentioned, there are some presentations that LDAHH has asked for. I know we're looking for, we're hoping that Autism Ontario will be able to present to us at some point on their work. There's a number of presentations that are in the pipeline on new programs, but is there anything else that anybody would like to add to the list of items for September, October time that we might want to put in the notes? Sophia.
I really enjoyed the CPP update about their new programming. I would love to hear how that's going or how implementation's going. Maybe, you know, October, November, if they could come back and talk with us, that'd be great.
Great, thank you. We'll add that to the list. And Colette.
I'm sorry if I missed it, Alison, but we did have a request around the mental health and well-being strategy. I'm not sure if you mentioned that.
Yeah, I didn't mention that, but yes, we do have that on the list. Yeah, and that would be a great presentation to have. And I did see one other hand go up. Let me just see. I can't see who that is. It's HSCC admin. I
think that's Candace.
Oh, Candace. Candace, is your hand up? Oh, sorry. Okay. Do you want to put your question in the chat and I can ask it for you? So we're just, Candace, I think, is just typing. Yes, that would be wonderful. So Candace was just putting down that she would love to discuss how Community Living Burlington is supporting students post-high school. So yeah, so that would be wonderful to have a presentation from Community Living about the supports that you're able to provide. We certainly do welcome hearing about the other associations and the supports to the community. So we'll definitely add that onto the list for the coming year and to hear about the wonderful work that you're doing in the community. Thank you very much for that. Okay. So not seeing any more updates, I would like to finally say thank you to everybody for all of your hard work this last year. It is obviously the last meeting of the school year. I know that there is lots going on in the school system for the remaining month and even over the summer period. So I'd like to thank all the staff and administration for their hard work supporting our students. And I'd like to thank SEAC for all their dedication and hard work over the last year. And to wish everybody a wonderful summer. Hopefully a little bit of downtime, a little bit of relaxation, some good weather, and some time, hopefully, with friends and family until September. It is, I guess, my duty and honor to adjourn this meeting at 8:57.
Well done.
All right.
Yay.